Hello friends, this is Chandrakant from Apple Mac Technologies and welcome to Top Brass. Friends, I've been reading a book called Can You Handle the Truth for past few days, which is written by my friend Mr. Naval Gant, who joins us from London. Naval, good morning.
Good morning, CK. Can you handle the truth?
Yes, it's a very interesting book. In fact, certain things I am learning new, and certain things are sort of reaffirming what I believe. So it's a very, very interesting book and sort of an eye opener. And right now, I am reading a section in your book which is on page 22, and it talks about decision making and leadership. So I have a few questions with your permission, if you may allow me to ask
Yeah,
that.
go ahead. Go ahead. We're here to be questioned. Go ahead.
Yes, in fact, it's a good opportunity because you're the co-author of the book and you're the best person to tell me what is running in my mind. So the question is like this: what I've seen in my career is, everybody goes through certain uh, decision-making process based on the situation. And what I've seen is many times it happens with everyone. It happens with me as well as seniors and my juniors. For a simple thing, they will ask too many people for advice. So it's like you have a problem and you ask too many people, whoever comes across you, because you're always in that frame of mind of the situation, and you ask that person. And what I've seen is people get, thoroughly confused after this advice taking session. They don't know what to do, even after taking the advice from the best people. So, in this context, since your book talks about decision making and leadership, how would you handle and what is your advice to me when I come across this situation?
Well, it's a really interesting question, and it's quite simple, really. I've got a decision to make. I may not know the answers. I may have too many gaps I need to fill in so that I can make a better decision. I mean, whether you're a manager or you want to call yourself a leader, ultimately we go through life and we all have to make decisions. The simple ones like what I want to eat today, you know? Oh, I don't fancy prawns, Oh, I fancy a vegetable dish for a change, okay? Now, for some people, that's enough confusion because they'll be thinking about, they won't make a decision, they'll be thinking about this all the time. And the best person to make a decision is you. But we all, like anybody else, we're human beings. We like to make sure we're making the best decision. So how do we do that? I'm I'm going to step into business, okay? Because let's leave the life decisions to one side. Let's look at business. And let me ask you a couple of questions, okay? Because when you see something that you're doing all the time, do you need to ask people questions or do you just get on with it?
I think, it is important to take advice from a senior person who might have seen that situation in his career, in his life. So I think it's human for me to think that if he has already seen this situation, maybe he can give me a cookie cutter kind of a solution which I can implement. So I think that is my premise of asking a question from a senior person.
So consequently, you're looking for feedback. So in other words, you might even say, I've been doing it this way, what do you think? Do you think that that's going to work? Do you think there's a better way? You'll just ask a few questions and you'll ask them to a friend, typically. That friend may not even be in your organization. It could be someone outside your organization. Does that make sense? I mean, you're nodding. So it sort of makes sense.
My experience is that even if I ask the best advice which is available to me, and that person can be from my past life and working for a different organization or maybe retired, because I will always go to a senior person who might have seen that situation. But my experience is even I take the best advice, it is usually wrong. I suffer consequences.
Now, you see, you've hit the nail on the head here, because you've gone out, you've reached out very simply. You know, you're a senior guy, you've got a huge amount of experience, and you're really good at what you do. But you reach out for just a little snippet of advice, you know, perhaps a change in direction, and you're saying their advice is usually wrong. So you've already made the decision up, actually, because every time you go to someone and you think, well, that person's giving me the wrong advice again, you go to someone else, and then you go to someone else, and you go to someone else. So rather than having the conversation in between our two ears here, you know, a conversation that you're having, you're creating all of these conversations by going elsewhere. So you've created complexity. Not me, you know, you've created it. And the interesting thing is we all do. So it's a fact of life. So how do we get through that jumble? Well, the first thing is, I would say, particularly in the large organizations. So I'm now going to take it up a gear, not just to SMEs. I'm going to talk about the very large organizations. We've heard of this phrase that good leaders walk the talk. You know, it's almost like universal language. And that means is they talk a good story, but more importantly, they're walking around the corridors and they're listening to what's going on there. These are the most fantastic leaders in the world. How many do it? How many really do it? They send their PA, go find out this. They call the finance director and say, I'm the chief exec, you know, I want to know this. So rather than literally getting in the lift and going down 4 floors and walking around and finding out what's going on, they literally pick up their notebook. That's the way that they've developed operating. We've got to change that. Another poor trait of large organizations, and I call it a poor trait because it's done so often and no one ever learns this lesson. They go outside to an expert. It may be a non-exec that's on the board that says, oh, I've got a great consultancy that's worked in this other organization, you know, using their non-executive capability now and saying, they've done a fantastic job in this organization. I think we really should be speaking with them. And then all the boards say, yeah, brilliant, great advice from a non-exec. No one ever asks, are you on their board? You get a kickback, you know. Even those simple questions are never normally asked because it's phrased in a particular way that let's bring in the expert. Let me ask you a question. In your organization, as when you were in your telecoms mode, didn't you have experts internally?
Well, we had a lot of experts. We had the big fours hired as experts who will come and guide us. So literally, these guys will come, the consultants from outsiders or PwC or those kind of companies. They will simply tell us, hey, do this, do that, without giving a reason. So I don't have any trust on these guys. If you ask me this so bluntly, I will give you a blunt answer.
Absolutely. This is the blunt world. Can you handle the truth? The book is so perfectly titled. This is the truth, you know? This is reality. But the question I asked you was, in your organization, not the other experts, not the consultants, in your organization, you had experts. They were the best hire when organizations hired them. You know, they didn't go and pick the worst candidate, they picked the best candidate. So therefore, by definition, when you're first hired, you're the best person for the job. And as you grow through the organization, you get to know what the organization does, how it ticks. As you move up the organization, you know, you get more experience. They layer on more responsibility and accountability. You're an expert, aren't you? So why don't organizations talk internally and find out what their people are saying about the organization?
Yeah, that is the challenge. In fact, nobody listened to each other. So that is a big challenge. Uh,
There is. No one and why don't they? Because the board doesn't trust the middle managers and the junior managers. They go to an expert outside the business who might know a lot about the business, but they don't live and breathe the business. And the best people that we've got in our organization that can tell us what we're doing wrong, how we can improve our customer relationship, how we can be better at sales, what accounting system is going to be best for us to be using, are the very people that are in the business. So walk the talk now becomes more evident. But the rush typically in the past has been bring in a consultant. Let's ask them what they see, because consultants are better than our people inside. Now that is the bit, that's just me saying my experience. But typically, if you see a consultant wandering around, what do you think? How do you feel? Why didn't they ask me?
my standard reaction would be, okay, he's here for 10 days. He's going to go away. We'll continue doing what we are. So very frankly,
Exactly. So the point is, no matter how good this consultant is, you go back on your past experience and you think, you know what, this person is, or this team, because sometimes the consultants come in and it's like ants. They're crawling everywhere. They're asking lots and lots of questions. Every question that you've asked of your manager's asked of their manager, and it's gone all the way out to the board, but no one's listening. So you started off this with a very simple question, sort of how do you make decisions? Well, you ask people, but you've got to be able to filter out the noise. There's nothing wrong with bringing in consultants. Nothing wrong. The bit about what is wrong is it's always the first option. And the first option, good business owners, good leadership to me is ask the questions internally and get the answers from the people that are doing the job. The other thing is, if I were your boss, and normally I'd just say, CK, get on with it, go and do it. If I were to say, CK, can you bring your team in? Because I'd like to have a brainstorming session about how we can make this place better. How we can really make my job easier or more difficult, frankly, but more importantly, how we can make it engaging for all of your team and you to come to work and really want to work and be innovative and change what's happening around here. Because I've read this great book. This great book says we can change internally if we just start asking the right questions. So I've got an epiphany. I've just changed my mindset and basically saying, I'm 61 years old. Frankly, how long do I want to be here? If I start to talk to you like that as your boss, what would you do? Apart from run out or go and get me a coffee and say, here, boss, take that because I think you need a dose of reality here. How would you feel?
well, I think there are two scenarios which are panning out in my mind at this point in time. One is, my boss is so experienced, that is why he doesn't care about, and he already know what he has to do and what the company has to do or what the team has to do. He's already aware about it based on his experience. The other idea, which is also running parallel to the first idea, that is, he doesn't care about me. I don't get any recognition. He doesn't even consider my intellect anything. So I think there are two parallel thoughts running simultaneously in my mind.
So I've now confused you, because I never was your boss and I never will be your boss, all right? But you've brought one of those bosses in, maybe many of them. And it is an epiphany. Who in an organization actually works so that they do themselves out of a job? Not many people I know do that. I would, because I want to do something better. You know, maybe I'm not a business as usual guy, as you well know. You know, I like trying new things. I like getting things moving. But as soon as it becomes run of the mill, in my mind, I'm not as interested. You know, other people can now take that on to the next step. And it's a bit like being liking everything that comes onto the market new. You know, remember when PS1, the PlayStation 1 came on the market, I was out there with the kids. You know, I want one of those. The kids wanted one of those, but I'm a big kid, you know. So I wanted to be one of those first, you know, like entrepreneurs, they want to be first. And when I heard that the PS2 was coming out, it wasn't a question of money. It was, oh, that must be better. So this thing about decision making is quite personal in many respects. But we can all make great decisions by asking the right question, going to the people we trust. And as a business, the people you trust are the people that are working for you. But frankly, if you don't trust them, why are they working there? You know, these are not robots that come in the office in the morning, you know, stamp in, they get a stamp here, you know, 11 o'clock, stamp for a coffee, 4 o'clock, stamp for a tea. Oh, sorry, I meant lunch, you know, 1 o'clock, stamp for lunch, you know, 5 o'clock, right, way home. You know, we don't work like that. We never have worked like that, frankly, not in my lifetime. So if you're going to trust people, get their advice, get their input. That, to me, is the best decision making you can ever make. Start talking to people in your organization and saying, we need to improve what we're doing. I want you to be far happier at work than you've ever been before. What have we got to do? Notice the language. It's not you do this, you do that. I'm going to do this. What are you going to do? It's what are we going to do? How are we going to solve these issues? Now, you may not like all of your job. So let's sit down and work out what parts you really like, what parts you don't like. Let's see if we can bring an intern in, you know, or an apprenticeship, or, you know, package it up so we can outsource it maybe. You start to have those discussions internally and things change radically. If I were to say those things to you, would you start to think, actually, quite like working for this guy? You know, he appreciates me. He makes me feel as though I'm wanted. He's bringing me into conversations. I know I'm not going to be in the secret conversations, but where it really matters to me and our team, yeah, I'm there. Does that make you feel that way if people were to ask you those questions? Be inclusive?
Neville, I think this is a very good advice. I think we all managers or leaders have to, follow these simple steps. But I think it's a totally new skill itself. So I think in today's discussion, we will talk about only this question, which is lurking in my mind. But I think it's a separate discussion to develop this skill where you have an inclusive policy in your team. So I fully agree with you what you're saying. But even to practice it, you need to develop a skill, which I don't think many people have.
It's funny because I can see the way you say it, you know, the smile on your face, you know. No, many people don't have it, but you know, we all have it. It's just that we've lost it. For some reason, it's lost. It's parked away in a part of the brain that we just never turn on. So this is why a lot of people, and this is a huge arena, all right, but it all stems from, can you handle the truth? And the point is, once you start to look at yourself and see who you really are, and that means looking in the mirror, you may not love yourself. You may not love yourself, because lots of people say, well, I don't love myself. I don't like myself much either. Well, actually, for you to make the next step, you've got to start doing it. Because if you don't, who else will? If you don't love yourself, are you going to smile like you're smiling now? You know, you just won't. You go, stand like this all the time. And you'll be negative. You know, when I first got a proper job in the 80s, I would hear this term, just being devil's advocate. I'm just going to be devil's advocate. Who's the devil's advocate? You know, why do we need to phrase it as the devil's advocate? Why don't we just say, in other words, I'm going to be a devil here, you know? I'm going to throw a bomb in, you know? I'm just going to throw a spear into this suggestion, right? When people say that, it brings up the negative. Lots of people bring up the negative. Here he goes again. Or here she goes again. You know, bringing in, you know, this particular side, you know? The thing is, we just say, what's happening, you know? It's working. Can we make it better? So we stop all of this jargon stuff. You know, leadership is full of jargon. MBA speak is around the world. It's over all corridors. I mean, even the majority of small business leaders now have got an MBA. But when they go into the jargon, what it typically means is they don't understand it. They're going back through the books and they're bringing out phrases in the books. When you really see someone that understands it, they'll just ask the simple question, how do I make the right decision? And that's where this started today.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Naval. It was a wonderful session I had with you. Ladies and gentlemen, let me present to you Mr. Naval Kant, who is the co-author of very interesting book called Can You Handle the Truth? And I will leave my email address. If you are a business coach or a leader or an entrepreneur, this book is a must read for you. You can contact me and I will share a free copy with you. So Naval, as usual, it was wonderful talking to you. We'll catch up again tomorrow.
Pleasure, CK. Enjoy the day, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.